Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Welcome back to the Kiana Canada Show. I'm your host, Kiana Canada. And today we are going to be talking about the topic why I stood up to my allies at the Belfast protests last week. Now, before we get into this topic today, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember that your likes and your shares, what it does is it pushes videos like this up in the algorithm. It tells the algorithm that videos like this are important, but we must remember that just because videos like this are not pushed up in the algorithm, that does not mean that videos like this are not important. There's going to be some things that we're going to be clarifying in this video, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm dealing with a very manipulative person in the dominant society who is attempting to tarnish my reputation and to paint me as somebody that I'm not. And so they have considerable power. And if it's a person that is, at the lower portion of the ladder, then they're being given imprimatur by a person in power to try and ruin my reputation and to try and paint me as a person that I'm not. Now, the first thing I want to clarify is I still don't have a phone, a tablet, or a laptop. And you may be asking, where am I recording this video? Well, I am recording in a space that does not belong to me. So it's not my personal space. And so that's where I'm recording. So I don't have a phone. As you know, Irish American information gathering agencies have hacked into the last lifeline that I had, which was a tablet, and stopped me from being able to communicate. And I think what they're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to try and isolate me to facilitate abuse. And what do I mean by that? So they're trying to engage in this sensory isolation where, like, I am without a phone, without a laptop, without a tablet, so that I can't communicate with the outside world, and that they could try and make me feel as if I'm in a prison. Essentially, that's what they're trying to do. It's for me, I think it's all psychological, and it's very manipulative when you think about it. And it raises the question as to how many people have they done this to, and how many people are they currently doing it to now? And this has been going on for quite some time. Again, it's transnational repression. Essentially, transnational repression is where state agents working on behalf of diplomatic officials or working, it's, excuse me, it's where state agents are reaching across their borders to silence the dissent of their citizens. And sometimes they do it through their diplomatic relations or intelligence capacities. Now, we need to understand that transnational repression is not just a citizen's country trying to silence their dissent. It could be another country, a foreign nation that is trying to silence the dissent of a person. We only need to look at Julian Assange, where he gave an interview with Pace and mentioned transnational repression and said that the United States was putting him through transnational repression. And so I think that a lot of people in Belfast already understand that the Irish governments and the United States are working together to put me through transnational repression. It's a current, and I don't think that many people, those that are choosing to believe something else, is just really in denial about it. So that's clarification about why I'm recording and how I am recording. And so next, ladies and gentlemen, is why I stood up to my allies, quote unquote allies, at the Belfast protest last week. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I did not intend to go to a protest last week. I was just walking in the city center and I heard the voices and the reverberation of the protest. And so it caught my attention and I was like, okay, like who's protesting? What's being protested? Because it's not always the same thing being protested all the time. And so when I looked, I saw a number of people in the crowd screaming that they were anti-racist that did not support me when I told them specifically that I was going through racism. Excuse me, that I was experiencing racism. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this video is not an expose. It's not a gotcha or uh, a video that is attempting to uh, cast aspersions or to shine a negative light on the people that I'm going to be talking about in this video. This is just reflection. And to say that, are these protests performative is the question, ladies and gentlemen. And so how did we get here with my standing up to the people that are supposed to be standing in solidarity with me? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the first encounter was a barrister. There was a barrister who, I forget her name, but she was a barrister and what I'll have to, let's see, just a moment. I can't think of her name. Let's see. Just give me a moment. Ladies, click. Just a minute. I am looking, let's see, area of practice. Okay, so I believe the barrister's name is Monye Danes. And so again, this video is not to cast aspersions or to shine a person in a negative light, nor is it defamatory. I'm speaking about my personal experience. And while I'm doing this, I welcome a conversation with all these people that I'm going to be discussing in this video for us to sit down together and have a real conversation about what's going on in Northern Ireland and to try and bridge the divide. And so I believe her name is Monye Danes, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the first time I saw her was in the bar association, and I asked her for her help, and she declined to help me. She just I was trying to explain to her that I was trying to submit a complaint so that I can get legal representation. And I don't know, for some reason, immediately, like my heart connected to her. And like something within my heart said, like, this person is like, the right person for me to launch my complaint to. Like I felt like this was like the barrister that would represent me. And so I had asked her for her help, that I was trying to submit a complaint because I was being denied a solicitor. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, uh, she declined. And so I saw her again, maybe a couple weeks before I was suspended from Queen's University. I saw her again. And when I saw her, I it was at like a function that we had all signed up for, and uh, she was speaking to a group of people, and I was waiting patiently, and she kind of turned her back to me, and I don't know why, because I don't know her, and I haven't had any encounters with her, so I don't know like why she was doing that. But I tried again, and I walked up to her and I said, I'm experiencing a serious human rights violation here in Northern Ireland. It has to do with racism. I would really appreciate if you would consider taking my case. And she says, well, barristers can't take cases from people off the streets, which is not true. A person can approach a barrister even if they don't have a solicitor. And so she declined to take my case and just was kind of uh, aloof with me, I guess is the way that I can explain it. And so that was the encounter with her. So that's one person. The second was a group of people at Rosa NI that were part of Rosa NI and part of Rosa NI. And so I had attended Rosa NI on two separate occasions, not working as a agent, not working as because I'm not an agent and I'm not working as an agent and I'm not spying on them. I attended because I am legitimately a socialist and I was looking for information and I was really interested in the topics that were on the itinerary to talk about on that afternoon. But when I tried to give my opinion about how to approach racial issues within Northern Ireland, they all were dismissive to me, like were rude to me, cut me off, didn't listen to me. And I was trying to tell them, like, yes, racism exists. You're speaking to a Black person that is currently going through a racialized attack by somebody in power. And, but we have to agree that not everything is racism. So when you blur the lines between something that's not racism and something that is, then people like me who were experiencing racism, we can't get justice. And so I was trying to explain that to them and really didn't have enough time to speak about that eloquently because I was being cut off and they didn't listen to me. They didn't actually hear my concerns. And I was being respectful. And when I entered the second meeting, I said, okay, I want to be transparent because these are potentially my allies. And so I want to be transparent with them about like where I stand politically so that maybe we can reach common ground. And so when when I first entered the meeting and I had an opportunity to talk, I said, I want to be transparent that I have chosen to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community. That does not mean that I stand in solidarity with war. I'm against war. I'm anti-war. But the Jewish people have actually done, have helped me. And what I mean by help me is like I refer to a video where a Jewish woman, when I was in Pennsylvania, had actually provided me with a ride, which was like a distance from where I was going to go. And so that was really nice. And then I also mentioned other incidents that happened, which none of these incidents were people paying me to do anything. And so that was the reason that I gave that I stood in solidarity with the Jewish community. Although I did have a Palestinian friend and still do love him dearly, I've there has been some issues between myself in the community, those that believe in Islam, that still need to work out our differences, and that's whether or not they want to. But at this moment, I have decided to stand in solidarity with Jewish people. That's not standing in solidarity with war. And so when I explained that to them, they stopped listening to everything that I had to say. And keep in mind that the meeting that we were supposed to have was not about Palestine, nor was it about the war in Israel and Gaza. But because I knew that most of them, if not all of them, supported the Palestinian people, which I told them, I said, you have every right to stand your ground on what you believe and what you support. And I'm not here to take you off your square. I mentioned that several times. But it seemed as if they were trying to take me off my square, and we couldn't come together on the issue that was important, which was there was a Supreme Court ruling by the UK government, excuse me, the UK Supreme Court about who is and who is not a woman. And so uh, that was a topic that I really wanted to discuss, and we couldn't really get into that because they got so defensive about uh, it, Palestine and anyone saying that they're not standing in solidarity with like what's going on. Because again, my position is if there is war going on and you're anti-war, you're not supposed to take a position. And so I don't take a position when it comes to war. Now, I may stand in solidarity with a group of people because of shared history or shared different, excuse me, that we have a shared history or historical similarities, but I don't stand ever in solidarity with uh, saying that we should go to war. Like, I'm against war. And so that was like the second group in the experience that I had. The third experience was there were a couple of people that were part of the trans community, and not only part of the trans community, but just so members. So this was, I believe, to be people of all genders. So maybe there was homosexual men, trans people, heterosexual people, any person that was supporting the trans community. There was a group of people. And so on two separate occasions, one occasion was one of those persons was at the Rosa NI meeting, and I spoke to her and tried to reach common ground with her. And I thought, maybe she was somebody who was open-minded, and not, and I'm not saying that she's not, but in that short time frame, I thought that she was. And as you know, like when I left that meeting, I left it, and it it just didn't. We went our separate ways. And then I approached her again on the streets, and I was like, "Hey, girl, I seen you at the Rosa NI meeting, and I just really want to have a conversation with you about what I've experienced here in Belfast." And I said, "I think that we should approach the hate crime that I was subjected to in a specific manner, so it wouldn't look as if we're going against Muslims." And that is exactly what I said. I said, "But this is a hate crime that I experienced, and I really want to talk to you about that." And so I'm not sure if hold on, the light went out. Hold on. So I'm not sure if at all that they understood that and took it under advisement. And I gave them my email, and they never contacted me. And so I don't think it has to do with anything. I don't think it has to do with my inbox being hacked? Maybe it does. I don't know. But they didn't tell me that. They could have told me that. They could have walked up to me and said, "Hey, we can't reach you because our messages are coming back undeliverable." But at the time, I was waiting like a few days for her response, and she didn't respond to me back. And so the next person was um, the member of, or the president of United Against Racism in Belfast. I believe her name is Ivanka. Yes, I believe her name is Ivanka Antova. And so I had approached. I've seen Ivanka Antova on multiple occasions. Our first encounter was excellent. We had decided that we were going to meet each other. We had a conversation at a screening and decided, you know what, we're going to meet each other and we're going to talk about what's going on here in Belfast. And then she canceled the meeting and said that she couldn't do it. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. And then when I tried to reschedule the meeting on a number of occasions, she refused to meet with me. And so I was like, okay, maybe somebody smear me to Ivanka, and that's okay. Yeah, I want to give it to her to, reach out to me and try and ask me those critical, hard questions about what this person could be saying, but she never did that. And so maybe she believed what that person was saying. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I seen her one day on the street and I approached her and I was like, "Hey, Ivanka, how are you?" I was like, "I'm sorry. I know that you're probably busy or got things going on, but I just want to let you know that I'm willing to meet and to talk about these issues in Northern Ireland if you want to." And she said, "Well, we're just a small organization." And I had asked why they didn't reach back out to me. And she said, "We're just a small organization and sometimes we just don't reach back out." And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. And so that was the last time that I talked to her, and that was on the street. The last person that I spoke to, ladies and gentlemen, was Patrick Corrigan, who is, I believe, the president of uh, Amnesty International. And I reached out to Patrick on a few occasions trying to hold a focus group in Northern Ireland on racism, and he didn't respond back to me. And then he was the Stephen Livingston headliner at Queen's University Belfast, and he was talking about racism, etc., and mentioning a lot of stuff that I felt was in contradiction. And I raised my hand and I had asked him that I was going to raise a difficult question, which he had urged anyone in the room to do. He said, "You can raise those hard questions to me and I'll answer them." And I said, he said, "Hard and uncomfortable questions." And so what I did was I contacted, or excuse me, I asked Patrick, I was like, "Well, why didn't you contact me back when I was trying to facilitate a meeting on having a discussion around the racialized attacks that's happening in Belfast? Like, why didn't you include me?" And so he was like, "Well, that's something that Amnesty International doesn't do. We really don't hold focus group meetings." And I was like, "Okay, well, that's your answer." And so those were the times that I encountered these people. And so strangely, all these people were at the protest last week. So the barrister, Monye Danes was there, Ivanka Antova was there, all the people from Rosa NI was there that treated me unfavorably. Also, the people from that trans group was there as well. And then Patrick Corrigan was there. So initially, I thought, Kiana, if you stand in solidarity with them, they're going to use you as a prop. And when you have another problem, or even the problems that you're experiencing, they're not going to pay attention to it. And so when I was at the protest, I decided to say, when they were saying that they were anti-racist, I was like, well, no, you're not. And they kept saying, we're anti-racist. And I was like, well, no, you're not. You're not. And the reason why I was saying that they're not, because all of those people, I approached them about my experiences of racism, and they did not support me. And ladies and gentlemen, it really goes to what's popular, right? So there was, I believe, a Muslim guy. And again, this is not to incite hate or violence on any community. I love Muslim people just like I love everyone else. But what I think is happening is that they're paying attention to like what is uh, popular. And so there was, I believe, there was vigilante groups that were um, profiling a particular Muslim guy. And so that became popular because it was in the news. And so they went out and protested on that. But remember that for months, this probably would even go back to a year if we're counting the encounter that I had with Monye Danes, that I have been speaking out about my racism for a very long time. But what's different from my racism and the racism that they chose to protest is that my racism is coming from somebody with considerable power that is possibly manipulating them into thinking that I am against them. When again, I look at all of them as my allies, but they have turned their backs on me when I've actually asked them for their support. So it only made sense for me to confront their contradictions and their hypocrisy at the protest. It only makes sense to do that. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a wake up call because again, there was somebody at the protest and they were like, we're going to find out who you're getting paid from. I'm not receiving any money from anybody. Like the grievances I have against my own community is just that. It's the grievance against my own community being hypocritical about racism. They're not truly standing against racism. They're standing against what's popular. They're not standing against state crime or hatred or fascism. They're standing against what's popular in the moment. And that does not mean that they don't care about those issues. That doesn't mean that they haven't stood against those issues before. But I'm talking about in my own specific situation, what I've encountered with the people that I've named, there is considerable contradictions at play. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's why I stood up against my allies at the Belfast protest last week. I welcome a conversation with all those people that we sit down and we have a discussion about what racism truly is. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm starting to believe that the definition of racism is starting to morph into something different and that they're protesting something different than what I'm experiencing because I'm a Black person and I know what racism is and have been experiencing it for quite some time. And so I think we just really need to sit down and have a conversation about that because I think what they did one time was when I tried to have a discussion about this at the meeting, like I said, they became very dismissive, and all of the group walked together to try and I don't know, it just seemed like very childish. But I'm willing to actually open my arms to have this conversation that we all need to have. And so if they're open to it, I'm open to it, and I'll end it there. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Remember, what it does is it pushes videos like this up in the algorithm. It tells the algorithm that these videos are important. And I'll be speaking about these critical issues in the upcoming future. And there you have it. Have a good day.